Welcome, everybody. Lovely to see you arriving. Hello, Mary. Hello, Donna. Lovely to see you there. Emma, you are just appearing now. Oh, well done, Donna. Good job. Oh, fabulous. Everyone's totally organized already.
Yeah.
And welcome to Emma and Susan as well. So exciting to be here. Cycles of Belonging with dear Stella Tomlinson. Really excited for this one. To me, Cycles of Belonging is the kind of the next step on from my Moontime book for people who are really into their cycles and wanting to look just beyond the menstrual cycle into all of the cycles of our lives, the cycle of breath, cycle of the seasons, and really understanding themselves more in relationship to all the cycles, both within our bodies and outside of us. So it's such a lovely book to have at Womancraft, and Womancraft is a very good home to it, I think. So Stella, we are delighted to have you here. For those who are coming to your work for the first time, do you want to give us a little introduction to yourself and the book?
Sure. Yes. So, so obviously I'm Stella, and I'm a writer and a priestess of Bridget. My background was in yoga and meditation, but around 2015, I discovered menstrual cycle awareness, which sort of lit a fire underneath me. So, and also discovered nature spirituality and felt called to exploring that. So that was what led me to really start to live into the exploring these cycles for myself, for my own body, and around me in nature of the moon, etc., etc. So and I started writing poetry around 2017 when I decided to train to be a priestess of Bridget. As suddenly poetry started arriving, which is very opposite to Bridget. So so now I'm a writer. I don't teach anymore. I might at some point in the future, we'll see. But so currently a writer, writing around women's emotional and spiritual well-being, very much inspired by the cycles of body, cycles of nature, exploring different aspects of spirituality, the divine, sacred, but with a very strong theme of self-compassion running through my work as well. So I write poetry and I write non-fiction, and as you know in cycles there's both is in there. So yeah.
Thank you. And how did you come to cycles? What was it that really kind of turned you on to them or kind of introduced you to them?
So it's in 2015, which I don't think is a coincidence. Was my 40th year of my 40th birthday. I got the book Code Red by Lisa Lister. Now something obviously drew me to that. I think I must have come across her on social media, and I was like, okay, menstrual cycle. I'd never really been particularly connected to my menstrual cycle, but something drew me to that, and I read that book. And it's fire within me. It's like, why didn't I know this? Why have I spent the last goodness knows how many years just not really particularly connected to my cycle? So it was something, just like intuitive, being drawn to it. And then as soon as I read that book, this makes so much sense. This really deeply resonates with me. And it was the same year, I just happened to pick up a book about Wicca in this chain of bookstores called The Works in the UK. They kind of sell remainder stock, I think. Anyway, but I picked up this book about Wicca, and I remember reading about the Wheel of the Year in there, and reading particularly the little chapter on Samhain, and it's like a really felt sense of in my bones, I know this. This feels so familiar. It feels so right to me. So those two things together, happening the same year, the reading, it's always been books, so I think for many of us, the book about menstrual cycle, the book about Wicca, and reading about the Wheel of the Year, and it just deeply resonated with me, and that's what got me really focusing on this connection for myself initially, because at that time I was teaching yoga meditation, so I started to weave little bits of this into my teaching as well, and again it seemed to really resonate with people. So that was the path to it, I guess.
Thank you. That's a really lovely little introduction for everybody, even if you've read the book and you know of the Stella, just to kind of put it in a bit more context. So I've got loads more that I want to ask you, but I know that you have a fabulous little way to bring us into this space together and to introduce us to the book. So please go ahead.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is just a very short opening centering practice, and then I'm going to light a candle, say a little prayer, and invoke a little invocation. Then I will read or take you through a very short meditation, which is from Cycles of Belonging, the Temple of Belonging, which is again quite short. Then I'll read the introduction to the book, and hopefully that'll give us a nice way to center ourselves. We may have had busy days doing different things, and help to just to center ourselves and connect to the energy of the book and the energy of the sacred cycles of life. Okay, so if you'd like to make sure you feel comfortable, and for this, completely up to you. You could keep your eyes open, or if you prefer, you could close your eyes. But just take a breath or two together if that feels comfortable for you. So just take a breath, breathing in, and when you feel ready, breathing out. And a couple more at your own pace. Deep breath in. And a releasing out breath. One more time at your own pace. Now I'm going to just light a candle here. And I bring it up to the camera, so it's your choice if you want to look at it or stay with the eyes closed. Heart to heart, flame to flame. Goddess, great mother, great mystery, we invoke your name. Flame of clarity, flame of healing, flame of comfort. We open to your presence and welcome you in. And I'll just guide you through this short practice to invite you to connect to your own inner temple of belonging. Take a deep breath, my beloved. Arrive here into your body. This is your starting place. And invite any unnecessary tension to release from your jaw, face, neck, shoulders, and arms. Inviting in a sense of softening in the torso, belly, spine, hips, legs, and feet. And I invite you to imagine yourself in a sanctuary space, however that looks and feels to you. This is a moment to bring to mind a place where you feel content and at ease. A place in nature, maybe, or a room or a building, real or imagined. A place that feels safe and secure. A place where you feel at ease. This is your soul's sanctuary, your temple of belonging. Take a moment to see it, sense it. What does it feel like? Smell like? Sound like? Sense this in a temple. If it's inside, is there a fire there? Furniture? What are the walls like? What colours? Or if you're outside, perhaps it's a garden or by a sacred well, or sat under a protective canopy of an old tree. There's no right or wrong place, because this is your space. Take your time and feel it. And know that you can return to this place at any time you need to. This is your soul sanctuary, your temple of belonging. And while you're in this space, may I offer you this invitation. Beloved sister, hear this truth. You are a wise and wild force of nature. Do you remember? Your body is formed from the strong, nurturing earth. Healing waters flow through you as your blood and your emotions. Each breath you take connects you to the dancing air which supports you and gives you life. Fire is in your spirit, powerfully aflame with sacred rage, divine joy, and luminous passion. Your cells are made from billions of exploding stars and the light of the sun and the nourishment of Mother Earth. Your emotions, hormones, and blood wax and wane with the moon. Your heart beats in time with the pulse of the planet, and each breath takes you through the seasons of the year. You embody nature's cycle of birth, growth, and fullness, of waning, release, and death, and of gestation and rebirth. You are the wisdom of the cycles of change embodied in human form. Remember this. Remember and reconnect to the pulsing web of life. Connect to yourself and your sisters and to all living beings with love. With your feet rooted on this sacred earth, with the moon in your womb and your blood, with the fire of the sun in your belly, and with each breath of life you take, rise up. Rise up in love for yourself and for all living things.
Thank you so much, Stella. That was really
Deep
beautiful.
breath. That's it. And when you feel ready, open your eyes if they were closed.
Oh, thank you. I feel like I've arrived now. I hope those of you listening do too. Really special way of opening space. Thank you. So tell me, what led you to writing the book and to putting this wisdom onto the page?
I've been writing since, when did I start writing? I started my first blog in 2010. That was about yoga. So I've been writing for what had been writing for a while before I started writing this book. It started, but this particular book actually started with the poems in there, because I was writing, as I mentioned at the start, it was around October 2017, I decided I was going to do the training in Glastonbury to become a priestess of Bridget. And it was around that time in my meditation, I'd started to get poems would come to me, or the first few lines of poems would come to me, and I'd start. I learned to have a notebook and pen close by. So that's what it's actually started off as. I thought about a poetry book, but then actually my second book, Whispers from Mother Earth, wasn't actually poems, some of which are in here. But I felt like, because I was exploring this, going around the wheel of the year for myself. I was doing that with my priestess training. It's a 2-year training. We were going around two cycles around the wheel of the year, one with Bridget as an internal practice, and then the second one as an external practice of how you might then share that with others. So I guess I was really kind of quite deep into exploring this for myself, and so I sort of felt like naturally I wanted to start to write about it to help me to explore these practices, these different cycles in more detail. And plus, actually, I think, as you alluded to at the start, Lucy, there were books about the menstrual cycle. Certainly this time when I was writing it, there were books around the moon. I hadn't come across at that point a book which explored all the cycles together. So, and I thought, well, I shall write it then. So that's another reason, actually, is because I was quite like, it's a book I was trying to find and I couldn't find. So as I was exploring these things so deeply, and I'm drawn to writing and exploring things through the written word, I thought, yeah, okay, I shall write it. And the year I actually wrote it was 2020, as we know what happened in 2020.
The year none of us will ever forget.
Yes. But that was the year I actually wrote it, and it was because there were no other distractions really. I mean, I was completely self-employed at that point, and I had been teaching yoga, but obviously that had to stop. So I also had a lot of headspace to do it, and time. So because I don't have children, so I didn't have to do homeschooling. So yeah, so it was just a really, really deep course. I said when I first read those two books, they're co-read by Lisa Lister, and the book about the Wiccan book about the bit about the Wheel of the Year. It was just this real visceral sense of remembering and reconnecting and feeling in my bones and in my blood that, yeah, this is the way we should be living, in connection with these cycles, instead of this linearity and obsession with constant growth and extroversion and being out there, and which never felt natural to me anyway. And I kind of this helped me find a language for it, and a great deeper understanding of yes, there is another way to live, and this is this is it. I'm sure obviously there are various ways we can live, but for me this felt this honoring, connecting to, inquiring into the sense of the changing as the seasons of the year, of the moon, and of my own menstrual cycle felt very, very deeply authentic and true for me. Yeah.
And it's really interesting that you did write it in 2020, which is a year, because of the lockdowns all around the world, that a huge amount of people got to stop and take a breath. Obviously not those who were like at the front line of the pandemic, to whom we should be extremely grateful, but those of us who weren't working in healthcare, who weren't working in government, got to step back, to stop. And a huge amount of people, because they weren't racing around all the time, because they weren't commuting, because they weren't stuck in offices all the time, suddenly got to see the cycles in action, be in the cycles. And I really remember that I live in Ireland, and that spring was one of the most incredible springs I've ever seen. It was, the sunshine seemed to be endless. You couldn't hear planes going overhead because there were no planes flying. There were very few cars going down the road because we were all locked down to a kilometre of our houses. And so the bird song, I will never ever forget. That was the soundtrack of our spring in a way that it isn't normally, because that was the loudest thing around, which was just incredible. And I think so many people really got that sense of connection to where in the year they were at that moment, which opened a lot of people's eyes, minds, bodies, hearts to being connected to the seasons in a way that they might have completely lost track of since when they were kids, or they might not have even had it then.
Right, it's very true, isn't it? And yeah, for example, I live not far from a woodland. It's literally a few minutes walk away, and been in there a little bit, but that's what me and my husband did. We just walked there loads of times, and it was beautiful spring, as you say. It's here in the south of England as well, and there's a bluebell wood in this wood, and which I don't think we'd actually kind of discovered before.
I think a huge amount of
amazing.
Discovered these kind of local places that were within spitting distance of our houses that we would have overlooked in the past, because we would have gone to the bigger places, the fancier places, you know, the places that everyone talks about, or, you know, are really impressive. But actually we miss the small little corners of nature that are within reach for us on foot every day.
Absolutely, yes. So, yeah, and it's interesting that since then, I've just noticed generally over the last just few years, it's a really huge expansion of, this is the Instagram view of the world, but a lot more people exploring and honoring and mentioning the different, you know, the wheel of the year, the different festivals. So when I first kind of, as I say, in 2015, when I first started connecting to it, obviously there were a lot of people for whom these were very sacred festivals, but it wasn't really mentioned as much as they are now. Like so many yoga teachers now, meditation teachers, and women's circles now, it's very much focusing around these sacred, you know, these sacred festivals, as well as honoring the moon cycles as well. So it's, yeah, I've noticed in the last few years it's become,
both have definitely gone far more mainstream than they were when we started Womancraft. Absolutely. I mean, when I wrote Moontime, so the first version that came out in 2012, like, it was really niche to talk about the menstrual cycle, let alone kind of talk about cycles in general. And, you know, and now pretty much anybody who has a period has got a period tracking app. Whereas then, like, tracking your menstrual cycle was unheard of. So, you know, that's in 11 years. I mean, it's really incredible how fast this information about self-awareness for all of us about how our bodies work and how our psychology works is kind of getting more and more and more into the mainstream. Self-care was a word that, you know, I'd only come across a couple of years before I wrote Moontime, whereas now, like, you know, you're reading about self-care in every mainstream thing. So it's very important that these things are becoming mainstream, and yet there is this way that we don't necessarily put all the pieces together. So people think about maybe their menstrual cycle when they need to, or they think about the wheel of the year but they don't kind of put all the pieces together and see the cycles upon cycles, cycles within cycles, which your book is just so good at making you really aware of.
yeah, that's what called me to write it, really, because really just at the level of the breath, which is why I started with the breath, that is the closest cycle with you, and it's always with you. As long as you're breathing, you're embodying that cycle, the inhale of spring and summer and the exhale of autumn and winter. So that's just a really, as I say, it's just a really quick, easy, ever-present way that you can remind yourself that you are cyclic, that all beings that breathe are cyclic, in that we have the cycle of the breath. And it's just so close to us and so obvious, we can easily miss that. But it's a beautiful way of kind of, I find, to center myself, is to just come back to that, just to come back to the breath, but to come back to the feeling of moving through that cycle of inhaling spring and summer, exhaling autumn and winter. And that little, maybe if you find it, that little pause at the end of the exhale before the cycle begins again. So it's a beautiful way to, because as I've written about in the book, that there were quite often people were talking about menstrual cycle and not well, they might mention the moon, but what I found most interesting is people, particularly in the yoga and well-being, talking about the moon but not mentioning the menstrual cycle, because that's all a bit icky. Don't mention that, we're all love and light kind of you know. So I'm not saying all, you know, but there's definitely a theme I came across as a strong connection to the moon without mentioning the menstrual cycle, which say, as I write about in the book, I find quite illuminating, in that let's say that there's still a certain amount of taboo and perhaps even shame, you know, connected with the menstrual cycle, even though it's been talked about more. We've still had quite a few thousand years of patriarchy, and you know, female bodies being deemed dirty, misbehaving, tempting, just wrong, not male,
unreliable.
yeah, unreliable, yeah, oh, yes, quite, yeah. So you know, it's still, even though I think periods are being talked about more, it's gonna take more than a decade or so to shake that
Definitely. And so what is your hope for what your book will bring out into the world? What is or is the dream for it? What is the, you know, you wrote it because these were things you were living out in the world yourself, and you were obviously wanting to expand that reach, but kind of Why? Why? What's the big dream?
Dream is the core thing. When we can connect as an individual, if you connect to this cyclic nature of yourself and life, it's often, I can speak for my own experience, and what I hope for others in connecting to this is a greater sense of self-compassion and being kinder to yourself. Because we live in a mainstream society. Our culture is, as I said, is very linear. It doesn't have space for ebbs and flows. Does, you shouldn't be too emotional. It's, and when we truly kind of realize that our nature, not just as people in female bodies, but all of us, all humans, we all are cyclic, because life is cyclic. It helps us to perhaps be a bit kinder to ourselves when we are in those inner autumn and inner winter times, whether that's in our menstrual cycle or in our life. I'm 48 now, I'm in perimenopause, don't know where I'm in it because that's the nature of it. Which is like an autumnal time. But for very many reasons we can go into inner autumns and inner winters, through bereavement, through grief, through sorrow, through loss, and on lots of different levels, which, as I say, our society just doesn't recognize or make space for. There's so many ways we could be grieving. This has been my kind of meditation for the last couple of years, really, for lots of different levels of the grief and sorrow which we can all feel, which we generally don't talk about, because we'll say, "How? Oh, I'm fine." Which is, I have a tendency to do that, but these deep currents are still moving through us. So yeah, but this book, and really, I continue to be fascinated by the inner autumns and inner winters, more so than inner springs and inner summers. So when we can attend to our inner autumns and winters and find the compassion to be with ourselves if they feel difficult, and also to honor them and to value the gifts of inner autumns and inner winters, it brings about a greater sense of self-compassion. And if we're more compassionate towards ourselves, we're more likely to be compassionate towards others. And that's a ripple effect of just a bit more kindness, really, more kindness, and peace, love, and bananas. But I shouldn't make jokes about that, because it's important. So there's so much on an individual level in our workplaces, in our families. There's so much disagreements, aggravations, etc., and falling outs, because we're not being kind to ourselves first, and we tend to then project that out onto others, don't we? So yeah, be kinder to ourselves, and honoring the fact that we are not linear, that ebbs and flows are natural, and that's, if you're finding a winter really difficult, spring does come. It might take a long time, but spring will come, because that's how nature works.
Beautiful. For me, it's the fact that we get taught that we are independent individuals, and that we are and should be kind of in control of everything outside of ourselves and inside of ourselves, that we are kind of responsible for everything inside and outside of ourselves, and it should be kept in order and it should be controlled. And the reality is that these things move through us, and the world moves around us, and there is actually not that much that we are in control of. And if we're constantly trying to control everything around us and resist everything that is happening inside ourselves and outside, we can use a huge amount of energy and exhaust ourselves and not get very far, and probably be quite miserable, because we feel like we failed all the time. And then, because we're taught we're individuals, we're taught that we're alone in this, that it's just you. And so for me, the understanding of cycles makes me understand that I'm no different to you, are no different to Mary, are no different to Donna. Like, we each have these cycles going on within us. They each will be slightly different, but we each have these life cycles going on inside us, which are reflected in and reflect the life cycles going on outside of us. And that we're in this great big dance of life, that nature is inside and outside, all joined up. And so our job is to dance with that, not to try and endlessly control it. And it kind of frees us up a bit, and it makes us feel less alone, because it's like, hang on, this is what happens. This is literally what life is. So to be going around constantly trying to stop and control it is insanity. And yet that's what we're taught.
Yeah. It is it's an unlearning and a remembering, isn't it? I think. Yeah, and actually a secondary actually thing to it as well, to why I wrote the book as well, is the feminist reclaiming of the sacred, the divine as not just being a God the Father. That there is how about Goddess the Mother? And so that's why that's another kind of, yes, people have read it, well, there is a theme through the book as well. That's
and your book is probably going to be a beautiful introduction to many readers to the divine feminine, the sacred feminine. There's many kind of goddesses and archetypes of the feminine in there that women might never have met before. So it's really exciting to me that this is a gentle, poetic and beautiful introduction to that, so that they can then, you know, go explore, find more once they've kind of felt safe in that discovery and excited by that discovery, because the way that you do it through the poetry and meditations is just so welcoming and inviting, rather than kind of filling your head with kind of like loads of ideas and the kind of the theory and the research and the history. Instead, it's just like, no, it's a direct experience.
Oh yeah, because that's how it has been for me. It's very much been I think as you can tell from the book, it's very much been a felt sense, an embodied kind of journey of connection. And yeah, so that's I think that's, you know, the visual, I've got the visualizations in it as well as various so many different ways. But I think it's because that's, I think, how that connection very much came to me as well. This, as I said, these words started arriving. I mean, I was always written, but I'd never written poetry until I connected to Bridget, and all of a sudden the whole poem started going, like, okay. But having said that, I mean, I was born at Imbolc, so it was all my birthday 2nd of February, so there's obviously something in the stars there with Bridget, that being her festival. But
oh, that's so fabulous.
I know. I didn't realize that, but it was I was doing my yoga teacher training, so this would have been 2010. Somebody on that course, she said, "You were born at Imbolc," and I was like, "In what?" Because I never had heard of it. And so that little seed was planted back then. It took a few years, I think, for it then to come more to the surface. When I was in the visit, went to Glastonbury, and I picked up this leaflet about priestess training and Bridget, and it's just like a real, like, you are picking this up, Stella, and your head's going, what priest, what? But my heart was going, my soul was going, yes, you're doing this.
And just to shout out there, if people haven't come across Womancraft before, maybe haven't picked up your book yet, we've got a lovely Bridget reader that we give out to people when they sign up to the Womancraft mailing list at womancraftpublishing.com. You get a free magical e-reader, which I think might have a piece of yours in, and the Bridget e-reader definitely does. So there's 2 of those, and then there's meditations and lovely things to listen to. There's a huge comfort package that we put together actually during one of the lockdowns when everybody was struggling, and we thought, what can we do? And so we put together lovely things for people to read. So please do, if you haven't yet read Stella's words and you want to get your hands on something instantaneously, that can be sent to you straight away. So tell me, Stella, I see a lovely bookshelf behind you. Talk to me about some of your favorite authors or most influential books in your life. What are your standout books?
In recent years, Sharon Blackie's books. So no, it's not Womancraft. But Sharon Blackie, if Women Rose Rooted, because she's talking there about the eco heroine's journey. Whenever, I mean, now whenever I read a book and they mention Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, I kind of slightly twitch, because, like, heroine's journey, not always the bloody hero's journey. So so that was kind of, that's about her work very much speaks, because she writes about the mythic imagination. It's interesting going back. I mean, Middlemarch by George Eliot was quite a formative book for me. I did English literature degree, and I did my dissertation on George Eliot. And there's a quote in Middlemarch about, there is no speck so troublesome as self. I think that was the title of my thesis. So that's all. And then that was I did that when I was about 20. So so kind of investigating the self has always been and a thing which is around that has very much been always attracted me. So Maureen Murdoch and the Heroine's Journey is another book which I very much really resonated with me. But yeah, so I thought, yeah, so it's I've but, you know, from when I was a teenager in my 20s, I read a lot of women writers. So I did George Eliot, Virginia Woolf. I used to love reading. Elizabeth von Arnim, which is a little bit of she's not so well known. She's a English writer, but she wrote, some of her books were very kind of nature mystic. It's really beautifully evocations of gardens and nature. The Enchanted April being one of them. That was rather beautiful. So yeah. But I think in terms of I think more recent years, it's like Sharon Blackie's work and the Heroine's Journey by Maureen Murdoch. But yeah, I do have a lot of books, a lot of oracle cards. These are just two of the bookshelves. There's bookshelves all around the house. There's another massive one to my left here. And I've got, of course, my expanding shelf of Womancraft books. I must give an honourable mention to Burning Woman, definitely, because that was obviously by Wonderful Lucy, because that's very much, I love the fiery energy of that, and the that the kind of connection to that. There's the witch within us, and what's his story has tried to do to that particular archetype.
Oh, thank you. And that came out actually a couple of months apart from If Women Rose Rooted, which I'm actually in as well.
Oh yeah, of course you are. Yeah,
yeah. No, Sharon and I both hit the stage and it went whoosh. So it was exciting. Back in the day. Fabulous. I'd love to invite any of our book club members who are here now. If you would have a question for Stella, please do unmute yourself and ask it, or if you want to type it in the chat, that's absolutely fine too.
I'll go.
Fabulous.
I'm not sure if it's actually a question, but it's more of a comment. When I got the book, when it first came out, tucked it away. I said, oh, I don't know. You know, there's a lot in here about the menstrual cycle. I'm postmenopausal. I'm in my 60s. I don't know. I'm going to put it aside because you know what? I don't really know if I want to read about any of this. And, you know, we're in the pandemic and, oh, I lost my mother and just life was kind of out there. And I'm very into nature, gardening, the cycles of nature. So, and familiar somewhat with the moon. But, you know, when you said you were doing this book, I picked it up and I started to read it. I'm going to tell you, as soon as I started, I said, oh my God, I cannot put this book down. I cannot. I read through even the blood cycle, even though it did not, you know, of course, apply to me. But I kept thinking, oh my God, if I had only had this when I was young, when I first started at the age of 12, when I had endometriosis so bad. Oh my God, this book would have helped me so much. Stella, I don't know what it is. Your words, the way it's put together, the way that you just have this way of speaking to us as women in the divine feminine to just say what's in our heart, in our soul, and it just comes out on this page. So I really just have to say thank you. I have copied down, I literally have finished today, typing in all of the prompts and then others that I found, because I'm going to use those during different parts just for journal prompts as the cycle of the year comes and the moon cycle and adding in more. And I must say, just even Lucy, as you were saying, the divine feminine, you know, the maiden, the lover, the mother, the queen, the crone. I mean, yeah, I'm probably more in the crone side of things at this point, but I find we're going through cycles. Do you see that? Do you see that? You know, even if you are a certain age does not mean that mentally, physically, even sometimes that this is who, okay, so you're a crone now, so that's it, and you're just a crone. I think the book really helped me see that. I'm just cycling continuously through life, through rebirth. And I have to say, today, as I was out for a walk, I pay attention to the animals that come across my path. Caterpillars were coming across my path today, which was like, wow. So, yeah.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. That's wonderful to hear. It's also lovely to hear how your words have landed with somebody. But it is so true, isn't it? About how yeah, we're not just the archetype or the life stage we are now. As I write in the book, the Maiden is always with us. She's the archetype who's always with us because she still lives in our psyche. And I've been personally doing a lot of inner child healing over recent years. But as I say, because when you got to this Crone stage of your life, all those other archetypes, those energies, those parts of you are still there, and they're still there in the seasons and available to us to connect to. So it's yeah. So I'm so lovely to hear how the book. You're obviously really I kind of am a believer that, because I've got books I've had years and haven't read. I kind of believe that when I need to read it, my hand will go to it. And I'll
but it's got to be there, right?
It's got to be there, yeah.
Because I do that too, and I buy things and then I give myself a hard time because it's like, oh, you bought it because you were at that stage then and you're not at that stage now and you should have read it back then. But you know what? If it's there, you are aware of it always, and you walk past it and you see its title and it's in your consciousness, and then you know when you come to another bit which is connected to that book, you can go straight to it. And maybe it wouldn't have been right for then, but it is for now. So yeah, I'm a firm believer and a book pusher, obviously a professional book pusher, but I am a firm believer of getting a book when it calls to you and having it there for when you need it. And
that's what bookshelves are for.
Absolutely. And I've been guilty of deciding that, I've read that, I'm probably not going to come back to it, or gifting something on or giving it to charity shop, and then being so cross at myself because 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years down the road, I need it and I need it now, and then I have to try and find it or order it and wait for it to come from Amazon, and just so keep your books, don't get rid of them, and buy them when you see them.
Not getting rid of this one.
Oh, thank you.
Are there any other reader responses? Because that was a lovely one. Thank you, Donna. But any others that really kind of stay with you, that kind of touched you?
I've had a few people saying how it's changed their lives, about how some people said that they were looking for a book about cycles and they found this and they really valued the fact that it was bringing them all together, and how it's really helped them to connect themselves and actually be kinder to themselves. And people, I've had reader feedback from somebody saying it's helped her to be less harsh with herself, because she realizes now that she is cyclic, and it's actually natural to not feel the same all the time, and that's fine. So I've had quite a few people tell me that they're teachers in some way, whether it's women's circles, yoga teachers or meditation teachers, and they've been sharing. A few people saying, I bought the book and I'm sharing it with everybody. and I know that's because often at the Wheel of the Year I'll get tagged in something with somebody who's leading a circle. They've read something from the book, which is lovely. So, but it is a lovely way to use it, actually, as if you are a leader of women's circles or red tents or meditation or yoga or whatever, because there's so many resources in there. We've got another couple of lovely books if you are a teacher as well. We've got Wild and Wise by Amy Bammel Wilding, and we have Enchanted Journeys by Sarah Robinson, which are two other go-to books if you're wanting meditations and stuff. We love doing resources at Womancraft. And just one more actually comment that somebody gave me, which really did touch me, because it's what I wanted to do. She said that she found it really interesting that I went through all the cycles, which could have been quite samey, but she said in reading it, she found something different and new in each of the cycles, because obviously we're talking about spring, summer, autumn, winter, but she saw, and that's what I wanted to communicate, that there are different levels in different ways of connecting to the different cycles, you'll uncover something a bit different. So that was a nice piece of feedback too.
And it was one of my favorite books to edit because, you know, you'd structured it very well. It had a natural structure to it. And it was just so soothing. Because I can't remember what was going on in my life. All I remember was I was feeling very flippin' stressed. And every time I would come to it, especially in the first section on the breath, and I could literally just feel the breath shifting and changing as I read it, and just coming out of the editing process just feeling calmed and soothed and held rather than stressed. So it worked its magic on me as I was doing my practical magic on it.
Oh, wonderful.
If anybody else would like to ask a question, could you just wave at me so that I know? And there is no pressure, but just I don't want you to leave having, okay, it's like an auction, people are sitting really still so that they don't bid. Oh, Mary, go for it.
I'm going to do. It's a little bit like Donna's response, actually, Stella. It is more of a comment, but I really wish I'd had your book when I was younger. And I think the part, I was just looking at it again, actually, the part when you're talking about the Crone stage of as a younger person being able to be aware of that, being part of my own cycles and being able to ask for that support. And now, you know, I mean, again, I've been prompted by this book club, which is very, very clever and wonderful outcome, to go back and look at the book again. I have read it, and, you know, with the best will in the world, because I'm an avid bookaholic. You know, I have so many books, and some of them I read straight away, some of them I don't. This is one I did read straight away. And sadly, I've had to do some decluttering. For the first time ever in my life, I've let some books go, some of which I'm regretting, Lucy. Yes. None of yours, though, of course. But anyway, I just want to say thank you, Stella, really. I mean, it's a wonderful book, and it's something that I'm so glad to hear is spreading out to different circles. And I'd like to think that maybe some of the men in these women's life might craftily pick it up one day and have a little peek inside when nobody's looking, and feel affected by it in some way of understanding perhaps a bit more. And of course, you know, all human beings are the same, as you said earlier. We all have cycles. It's not just a female thing, it's a human being thing, isn't it?
Oh, thank you, Mary. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mary. So I'm going to start bringing us towards a close by reading a lovely poem from it, which felt apt to me today, which is called Come Back to Your Heart. Come back to your heart when your mind is racing and you don't know which way to turn. Come back to your heart when you're lost and lonely and fear hope will never return. Come back to your heart, even if it feels it's breaking, through loss and grief and doubt. Come back to your heart if anger blinds you and you want to stamp and scream and shout. For in your heart is strength and wisdom to guide you along the way. In your heart is love unwavering, bringing light to the darkest day. In your heart is enough kindness and compassion, all fears and doubts to soothe. In your heart is trust and connection to help you see the truth. Slow down, breathe, and quietly listen to the whispers of your soul, telling you that you are love and you are loved. You are perfect, radiant, and whole. So come back to your heart, the center of love within you, whenever you feel alone. Come back to your heart, the wellspring of healing within you, and let her welcome you home. Thank you so much, Stella, for your time here with us and for your beautiful book, Cycles of Belonging. Thank you for everybody who has joined us here today. Our next book is for book club is The Other Side of the River, which comes from very early back in her story, by Ayla Kundry-Carrico, who is a woman who is very, very hard to track down. She is always moving countries, moving houses. And so for a couple of years, we didn't even have signed book plates for her because we could never get them to her and then get them back. So we finally have signed book plates, which is very exciting. So if you have bought a copy in the last couple of years and didn't get a signed book plate, next time you're placing an order, just let us know and we will slip a signed bookplate in for the other side of the river, because we have them. This is a really special book, ecofeminism. It's about spirituality, about women, about water and the world. It just works on every single level of what water is, what it means to us, and how it impacts women. So that's January the 11th, and the information will be going out soon. This weekend, we have The Birthkeeper of Bethlehem on Kindle sale. So that's going to $1.99 sterling and $2.99 and euros. So that'll just be for this weekend. And it's a fabulous seasonal read coming up to Christmas. This is a celebration of midwifery. It is the story of Jesus's birth and childhood through the eyes of his midwife and the women in his life. So it is her story. It's a remembering of the stories that were missed and lost in the telling of the biblical stories. So if you loved The Red Tent, this is for you. If you are a birth nut, this is for you. If you love historical fiction and remembering the women who were forgotten, this is for you. And our newest book out is myself and Sarah's Kitchen Witch Companion, which has hit #2 in gifting on in witchcraft on Amazon. So that's very exciting. It's doing very well for us. It is beautiful. It's a companion to Sarah's first book, Kitchen Witch, which broke all sorts of Womancraft records. And it is recipes, rituals, and reflections. There's over 200 illustrations that I did inside. And it's a collection of, I think there's 12 different women all around the world who kitchen witch in different ways, in diverse ways from around the world. So do grab yourself a copy of that. Stella, thank you once again. And thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you.